originating from the podcast studio inside FAM 360's headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. This is the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast. The Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast is designed to encourage, equip, and inspire our audience through a combination of inspirational stories and real-life experiences shared by other successful and skilled leaders in a variety of vocations. We hope that the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast empowers each one of us to step out, step up, and ultimately thrive as leaders. Now here's our host, Mr. Matt Maloney.
Hello, and welcome to the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Matt Maloney. All right, guys. If it's morning, grab a cup of coffee, put on your favorite jean jacket, grab your Palo Peralta skateboard, and let's hop into the DeLorean and go back in time to the mid-1990s because today's guest is a friend. I mean, I can call him a friend because we're friends from high school, although we haven't seen each other in 25 plus, we'll just go with that, 25 plus years. So we go way back to high school, before we were leaders, before we were husbands, before we were fathers, before there were cell phones. I'm not even sure there were briefcase cell phones back then.
There were not.
Yeah. Gosh, really? Man, we're dating ourselves. All right, guys. Today, I'm proud to introduce Mr. Tyler Reagin. Tyler is the founder and CEO of the Life Giving Company and co-founder of the 1010 Project. He's written 2 books on leadership, The Life Giving Leader and Leading Things, which I think this is your more recent one, right? Mm-hmm. Leading Things That You Didn't Start. Thank you for these books, by the way. For sure. Go Generals. I saw your scribe there.
It might be the first time I've said that in 25 plus years.
Yeah, 25 plus years. That's right. He also is has a podcast called the 1010 Project Podcast. So check that out on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever your listening vehicle of choice is. So, I thought I'd start off today. I thought it was appropriate to start off with a quote. I like to start all my podcasts off with a quote. And this is a quote from your book, The Life Giving Leader. And it says, how you treat people is based on the belief that in every interaction, you were eyeball to eyeball with someone who has value. And you go on to say, someone Jesus died for. And I thought that was really just like, I sat in that yesterday.
Yeah.
And listened to that. I mean, that quote, and said it over and over to myself in my head, and just sat there by myself and just thinking about, and I was looking at the people. I was at a restaurant looking at the people in the restaurant, and it just really resonated with me, and it stuck with me, and I thought that was great. So Tyler, a servant leader whose aim is really to serve other leaders, and we're going to learn about that today. So it's an honor to have you. Welcome.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I was actually walking through your office thinking about that kind of idea, because it doesn't matter what business you run, you've got a group of people out there that you have an opportunity to impact for good.
Yeah.
And they have jobs, and they are working, and they're taking care of their families.
Yeah.
But each of them have value, and they're not just a number on a sheet. Simon Sinek, in his book, Leaders Eat Last, he talks about how there was such a shift in the 80s and 90s to where people just became a number.
Yeah.
And that was not okay, but understanding that people are people, and they are an asset in a good way, and not just a number. So it's just kind of trying to have perspective on that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. I think how leadership, although people maybe didn't really talk about it in this way back in the 20s and 30s and 40s, but I feel like that it really started to change, and that mindset of people were just numbers started to happen. Post World War II, post 60s, there was all this change that was going on. And but I feel like we've kind of come back to center when you look at all the things. Did you know today there are over 56,000 books and growing with the title, or in the title with the word leadership in it.
It does surprise me.
Over 56,000. And I thought about
That's why I haven't sold many. Okay. Yeah, I get it now.
No, we got to get you to the top of those search engines.
Once you understand that, my publishers have always talked about, the percentage out of 10 books that they count on being bestsellers is pretty low. I'm always like, I'm good to be in that other percentage. Yeah. It's fine. You just keep letting me write books. It doesn't matter.
Then I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Hey, honestly, that's a pretty cool thing to do.
It is.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting. So for the audience, Why don't you just tell the audience, I mean, I talked about who you were, the organizations you lead, but just tell us a little bit about your organization, the mission, the vision, how you try to keep that out in front center for your people.
Yeah. So we've got two things that really spend most of my time on. I do leadership consulting and coaching for churches and a Christian university, and then a couple businesses as well. At the end of the day, one of the things I love about coaching and consulting is I'm emotionally neutral when I come into an organization, and I have enough experience in leadership to be able to look at a situation and not have the emotion connected to that person, to that thing, to that history, to that idea, and go, hey guys, just a fly on the wall situation. And because I have credibility in the space, it's a trusted voice.
Sure it is. Yeah.
So it gives you the chance to kind of break down some obstacles that companies can't seem to get over. Leadership obstacles, organizational strategy, who's reporting to who and why. There's an organization I'm working with right now, and there's a staff member who just continues to hit a wall with their leadership and their emotional intelligence.
The leadership's emotional intelligence, or the staff members?
This person, the staff member.
Got it.
And what we realized this week is I think I'm going to be able to unlock some stuff for him simply because I'm not his boss.
No doubt.
Most organizations, the boss is going to start coaching you.
Sure.
Well, I'm not going to be honest if the boss is coaching me, but having an outside voice who has credibility, experience, training to be able to unlock some of that for some people gives them a safety and an ability to go, okay, and maybe not be as defensive as they would if it's the boss. So most of my days is spent doing that and working with leadership teams, executive teams, et cetera, working on team development, leadership development. And then I have the thing called the 1010 Project. And that one's a much more calling / deep, thing. I was
a deep-seated calling for you you just,
And it came from a place of pain. I lost 3 pastor friends to suicide in about a 12-month window. And the last one I was with about 3 weeks before he did that, and had one of the best, maybe one of the most spiritual experiences I've had in a long time, was with him and Josh, my co-founder, and a couple other guys. And Darren was just a close friend, a good guy. He was actually serving pastors in this capacity. And then 3 weeks later, he took his life. And it was just like, but what I started wrestling with was going, and truthfully, Matt, I was okay to just do the consulting thing. I didn't need to be in the public. I don't need to do, this national stuff I had done for a little while.
Yeah.
I was okay to just go, I'm just going to serve my family, serve these clients well, play golf, call it a day, But this moment, that weekend when Darren took his life, it just rattled me to the core. And I remember feeling like the Lord said to me, in my faith experience, that I had buried a lot of the talent that he'd let me experience and go through. And I was like, yeah, I did, because it hurts. There's a lot of pain in that thing. But what I realized was God has uniquely gifted me to serve pastors.
Yeah.
Like nobody pastors very well. And then nobody leads leaders very well. There's not a ton. Mm-hmm. And I've been uniquely positioned to do that in some ways. And so we just started these year-long groups where we take guys on. Right now it's guys. We've got women's groups coming on this fall. But it's taking guys and putting them in a safe community for 4 to 6 guys for 12 months. And we take them through a couple world-class excursions. The key is in the middle of it, we do a 5-day counseling retreat with Onsite, which is based in Nashville, but we do it in San Diego.
Okay.
And to take a group of guys, spiritual leaders has been our guys so far.
But you're converting, you're moving, and I mean, you're moving into the business
right now. But we have a group of business leaders, like a couple of Chick-fil-A operators, a couple different CEOs, because they need it too. They want safety. They want a place to be able to be honest about what they're feeling, and that honestly came
a sounding board. Hey, I'm feeling this. I'm experiencing this. Are you guys experiencing the same thing? That validation is needed, right?
Thinking about your business or thinking about pastoring a church. The more successful you become, the more isolated you become.
It's lonely.
It is. And I hear that phrase all the time. It's lonely at the top. The reason it's lonely at the top is because you carry a weight that nobody else carries.
Yeah.
They go home and they're not thinking about payroll tomorrow. They're not thinking about that issue. They're not thinking about where we're going to get revenue from. They're just doing the job that which is great, noble, and the right thing.
That's right.
But you carry a weight that nobody else carries.
Yeah.
And I feel that for different things. And that's what makes it lonely. It's not lonely because we're not with friends. It's not lonely but the truth is, the more successful you become, your friends end up either on payroll or, you know, they're around, especially in church world, good grief. Like your friends either go to your church or you're on payroll. So now if you have an issue, especially in a morality space for the pastors, they've got an ethical thing they're struggling with, an addiction, they're struggling with whatever. They can't tell anybody.
Right.
They go to their board, unless their board is like superhuman and very neutral and able to handle something like that. They're scared to death to go to them.
Yeah.
Their friends are on payroll. You can't tell them, hey, I'm your pastor, but oh, by the way, I'm struggling with alcohol addiction. I'm struggling with these things that I'm supposed to not struggle with or whatever. So anyway, but when we watch guys, this has been unbelievable to watch guys sit in a room with other senior level leaders who absolutely understand every weight that you're carrying, but don't live in your world.
Yeah.
It has become, we had 2 guys in their 50s say that this was the safest they felt in 35 years.
I believe it.
And so that's what we're trying to do, is just create a 12-month process, a community where guys feel like, I have a group. If I ever, and these guys, I'm telling you, they went from knowing zero about each other to, I'll be on a plane tomorrow. What do you need?
Yeah.
It's been pretty powerful.
It's almost like a personal board of advisors, right? But in a more intimate way, right? And the whole,
it's less masterclass board and more truly friendship.
Yeah. A personal friend. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. And that's why you keep the group, I'm assuming, why you keep it intimate in terms of size.
Yeah. And we have a group leader, and we leave in 3 weeks for on-site, which for these groups 3 and 4, the business guys and 2 groups of pastors. The pastors will do, we'll all be at on-site together for the big teachings, and then we break up and do our group work separate. So they'll get to know other guys and stuff like that, but their group work is done just in that smaller group.
It's funny, or it's interesting, I should say, that you mentioned, you were just talking about, thinking about payroll and are we going to make payroll and all these things. Right. So last week I'm in Phoenix at our offices in Phoenix. We've got 3 of them in the U.S. here, Phoenix, Arizona, and Paso Robles, California. I'm in Phoenix. And the Friday before, we get hit with a client of ours through no wrongdoing of us. Right. We didn't do anything. In fact, we were doing great for them. They decided to pull completely out of the U.S. market. Within 1 week, they notify us they're pulling all of our business, 100%, which is significant business. Okay. And we're sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, what do we got to do? We got to make budget adjustments here. And then you start looking at the people, right, that are going to be impacted by this. And we had to let go of some people in this area, in this particular division. And it was heartbreaking, to be honest with you. I toiled with it. I stayed up the night before knowing I was going to have this conversation.
Nobody else is staying up.
No. And I stayed up the night in that hotel room knowing that I was going to have this conversation with one of the leaders, because we had to let one of the leaders in this area go. And it was tough. Yeah. It was tough.
Yeah. I went through a season like that, Matt, where I had to, in a month, because of some outside circumstances, we had to let, I think, 15 people go. And these are my family. These are, I give my life for these people.
Yeah.
But I had a moment the night before, and I've always said this, I'd rather lose sleep before a hard conversation than lose it after because I handled it poorly. And I think that's leadership
without a doubt,
right?
Yeah.
But I remember, and again, drawing from my faith, I remember God saying 2 things to me when the day before I had to do this. Number 1 is, I'm not their provider. He is.
Yep.
And number 2, I could never love those people more than he does. That just gave me this okay, I know I'm doing
peace
what I have
and
to
confidence.
do. I know I'm doing what's best for this organization, for myself, and for them at the end of the day. But man, it doesn't make it easy.
So what do you, from your perspective, you've been pouring into, you're a leader of leaders, really, right? I mean, that's what your organization does. And you've been pouring into, what are some of the, and we don't have to know the intimate details, but what are some of the biggest struggles that you're hearing from some of these men and women, or soon to be, because you're holding women's class, of some of the struggles that they've had? We talked about a few things just a moment ago, but just some of the bigger, deeper issues that you've heard and kind of walked through with them.
So here's what's interesting.
And by the way, the reason I'm asking this question, I want the audience to know and hear, because I think sometimes people think about leadership and, leaders have all the answers. Leaders have it together. It is That is completely the opposite. We're human just like everyone else, right? And as the cartoon or animation Ratatouille, I don't know if you've seen that, right? Yeah. Anybody can cook.
And the new Disney ride, for the record.
That's true, the new Disney ride. Anyone can cook. Well, anyone can be a leader, right? Not everyone chooses to be a leader, but I believe anyone is capable of doing it.
Right.
The question is be careful what you, or, saying be careful what you ask for, right? Because it is lonely, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So when I speak at churches or organizations, one of the first things I'll do is quote John Maxwell that says leadership is influence. And then I'll just say, so raise your hand if you have influence with one other person. And if you don't raise your hand, that's an issue. We got to figure that out. But how you steward your influence, whether it's for 2 people or 200 people, that's your leadership. So it doesn't, I think what has happened is we've coupled leadership with upfront leadership. And that's not the truth. Like, the truth is each of us have a leadership responsibility.
Without a doubt.
The receptionist that let me in, she has a responsibility of influence. That's her leadership responsibility. How she talked to the people on the phone, how she let me in, how she serves, this company in the way she does.
Yeah.
And she did a phenomenal job. And I love seeing that. I remember, I think it was, anyway, we can go down too many rabbit trails. I get distracted easily if you don't know that. So even as I think about life-giving leadership, one of the things I say in there is that when life flows, influence grows. So whether that's with one person or 20 people, you choosing to bring life to those that you're influencing, that's the simplest way I know to create leadership.
Yeah.
What we're finding right now, what I'm seeing day in and day out, whether it's business leaders or Christian leaders or pastors, is there is a complete it's not as fear as much as just this ridiculous uncertainty on so many fronts. Pastors are burning out at a level that we've never seen before because of COVID and the racial reconciliation issues that we've had the last 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
What's happening is,
and that's the same, but you said pastors,
it's the same across the board.
CEOs.
Here's what's unique about it.
Okay.
The uniqueness is you're on a platform communicating to thousands of people, hundreds of people, whatever it is. And you're going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
And then you get filleted.
Yeah. Right.
On a consistent basis. Yeah. So here's the crazy thing about
there's so many perspectives and so many opinions. And so while one people think you got it right, this group says, no, you got that wrong.
I've lived through this now the last 3 years, watching my friends in the churches I work with. You start back too soon from COVID, you're terrible. Half the group thinks you're terrible. You didn't start quick enough, the other half thinks you're terrible. You add the political climate in the U.S. for the last 2 to 3 years, and people wanting direction, but also coming to that want of direction with very specific ideas of what they think you should say about that. So here's the unique thing in the church world. My 3 years from a master's degree, I took 30 courses on church history, on exegesis, on hermeneutics, on how to preach, on how to teach, all for the 30 minutes on Sunday. I took 0 courses on Business 101 and 0 courses on Leadership 101. That's what I do 80% of the time when I'm leading a church. And so then on top of that, so the CEO of the small to mid-sized company, sometimes a large company, you've got to have a healthy culture. You've got to be above reproach financially, which you've never been taught how to do that.
Yeah.
You've got to run a business. You have a board that's highly educated. That makes 5 times what you make, but yet have an expectation on you that's probably unrealistic.
Yes. And
then, oh, by the way, on Sunday, you've got to be clear, concise, funny, and theologically sound, or we're going to wave our little check and go, we're going to go somewhere else. So there's just a unique pressure in that seat. Now, I think in your world, in the business world you sit in, there are different elements to that.
Similar, but different.
Correct.
But different,
But so there's an expectation of, well, yes, you lost that client, but we still work here. Like, you got to figure that out. And you're going, there's literally no way to make that work.
Yeah, and it's similar on the decisions, though, too. Like, and everyone went through this. COVID thrust us into this alternative universe that none of us really knew how to navigate, right? And I've talked about this several times. Martin Luther King's quote, and it's on one of our, I think it's in our war room here. You don't have to see the whole staircase. You have to just be willing to take the first step. Right. And that's in both, going, in positive and prosperity directions as well as in tougher directions, right? And I just remember going through all of there was so much we were processing. And when do we bring people back? When do we not bring people back? Are we going to bring people back? How do we get people out of here? We had to go to our clients. We had to get permit. We're regulated in some parts of our business by regulators. Can we even send these people remote because they have, patient information and HIPAA concerns and all these things, right? So we were going through all this, processing it. We were having 4 hours of our day were meetings, right? Our compliance management team was involved. We had outside consultants involved. Like, how do we do this? What do we do? And I remember saying this. I said, we cannot please everyone, and we're not going to be perfect. Perfection prevents progress. We just have to start moving forward. Take all the information in that we can and make decisions based upon that and kind of let everything go. But for me, and I'll say not everybody on my leadership team are believers, but for me, I rested in the fact that God had that. And I said, okay, because I was really toiling over it.
Because it's hard.
It was hard. But to the point, and I knew some of the decisions that we made were not popular. And at the time, there were decisions that I was recommending to make that I was getting pushback on from others on our leadership team. And one at the time, our general counsel, chief compliance officer, she's not with us anymore. She's at another organization, and she's great. I love her. She's awesome. But she had a much different opinion than I had, a significantly different opinion on direction and things that we should do. But, like I said, you're not going to please everyone. And so you do get filleted, even by your own people, not maybe like the pastors do with thousands of people or whatever it might be.
Well, and the publicness of what happens in the ministry right now.
Sure.
I mean, it's unfair, honestly. It's a world where you go, gosh, have I ever made a mistake? Because if I made a mistake, somebody can dig that up at some point and put it out there and write it on Medium. And now I'm going to get hammered for something that I did at 16. And it's just weird. It's a weird world. So I think the uncertainty, I'm seeing a lot of burnout coming from our mutual friend we graduated with, Kane Lester, sent me a picture one time on Instagram. He texted it to me. It's Chris Farley from Tommy Boy. His hair is everywhere. He's standing there. He goes, and the quote is, "I'm kind of tired of living through once in a lifetime events," which is what the last 3 years has felt like. It's like, how many can we live through?
How many can we live through? Right.
Like record price and gas. I just drove to Orlando and back, and my gas was $100 fill up for a Tahoe.
That's incredible.
I was like, holy smokes.
It's incredible.
What's happening. So I think that's a big piece. At the end of the day, what's not unique is leading people's hard.
Oh, without a doubt.
So it doesn't matter what day we're living in, what
without a doubt,
our cultural, people are people. And so, and that's why I try to just, when I talk about leadership, and even that quote you mentioned at the very beginning, that is kind of the basis for everything I do leadership wise. It's just trying to help organizations and people understand that people are people. And if you want to lead well, you care for people. Even when you let them go, you care for people. And that's sometimes the most caring thing you do. Henry Cloud's Necessary Endings book talks about we all have necessary endings. Sometimes you'd make that decision, and other times others make it for you. And I'm not like going around looking for who can I make that decision for, but sometimes I have to recognize in my leadership, I've got to make this decision. And I know they're not excited about it, but it's going to be better for them in the long run.
Mark Miller, who's an author and an executive at Chick-fil-A, he's got a book. He's got several books, but one of his books is Lead from the Heart. And he talks just about that very principle of ultimately it boils down to great leaders we process information, but you lead from the heart and look at, how that's impacting everybody. You're not going to please everybody, but you can love everybody, right? And it can be done in a loving way. So I want to pick this back up on our next episode because there's a lot of things that I still want to ask you that we haven't touched on. And I also want the audience to learn about your family and a couple of other things. We're going to talk about a couple of fun questions. So Tyler, thank you for joining us today. To all you listeners out in podcast land, thanks for joining us today. As you go out, I hope that your journeys are filled with opportunity to lift others up and make the most of each of your day as you aim to go above and beyond. Thanks, guys.
Our executive producer and host is Matt Maloney, President and CEO of FAM360. Strategic Communication Coordinator, Michelle Ducato. Production assistance by Tin Dog Studios. Director, John Berland. Creative Assistant, Whitney Berland. Theme song, Connecting Dots by Curtis Cole, provided by Artlist. Please subscribe today and don't miss any of our weekly episodes.